Ladies and gentlemen, I have the pleasure of introducing to you the fourth speaker, Professor Marnie Hughes-Warrington, the Deputy Vice Chancellor of Academic for the Australian National University. She was trained in history, philosophy, and education at Oxford University and the University of Tasmania. She's worked at Washington University in Seattle and Macquarie University in Australia. I think in one of her profile characteristics, one of the most exciting things when I read it was that she is a passionate teacher of history. And she likes to instill in her students the concept of being a global change agent. Marnie has also shaped the way we look at history and education. She has written 5 textbooks and have acquired $16 million worth of grants. So again, ladies and gentlemen, give Marnie a warm welcome.
Okay, I want to talk about excellence because I think this is what this is really about. And I'm going to start off in the digital world and I'm going to come back to Malaysia because I think that's really important. That's why we're here. The first thing I want to do is to share with you what it must feel like right now to be in education. If you're like me, you receive 1 or 2 emails a day from e-learning companies promising solutions to problems that we all have. My favourite one is companies promising to improve our retention rate to 80 or 90%. Our retention rate is currently 94%. So I politely write back and say, thanks very much, but our very old-fashioned face-to-face seems to be doing okay just now. It feels very stressful for a lot of staff, and it also feels stressful for students. Some of my staff say, I don't even know what half those things are. What does BYOD mean? What does best of breed mean? What are you talking about, transborder data flow? I just want to sign a contract. I want to do something interesting. And you're telling me there's legislation and that people are enrolled online. It feels very stressful. So our decision is to take this very deliberatively and to say what matters to us as educators and what's our mission as educators, not as technologists. And for ANU, we've decided that the 2 primary things for us are connecting with people through things that we think are globally significant for us. So what are our signatures in e-learning? Okay, so let me take you to one of our interesting recent decisions. We decided to join edX. And a lot of people ask us, why did you join edX? What's the business model? What's the strategy? Are you going to franchise? Are you going to go to SPOCs, small private online courses? Is MOOCs what you want to do? And my answer is, tell me whether your university has an utterly understandable and rational business model right now, and then tell me whether MOOCs make sense or not. A lot of what we do doesn't make sense financially. A lot of what we do makes sense for other reasons. And we decided in joining edX that we wanted to do it not for financial reasons, but for other reasons. The primary one is relational. We actually think that MOOCs are about connecting with people that are important to us. And who are they? High school students across Australia, and this would apply to Malaysia, who do not get access to the kind of teaching that they want because they do not have a locally trained teacher in that space. So next year we'll be teaching astrophysics, and we took an interesting strategy. When we announced we were joining edX, we said to all our faculty, you could offer to teach a MOOC, but we'll only offer 2 or 3. And in a research-intensive university, everybody then wanted to do one. So we made them very attractive by saying that people couldn't do them. So immediately our Nobel laureate said, I want to do one. We said, well, okay, that's cool, you can do one. So he'll be doing one in astrophysics because he's interested in all the students out there in high school who are not getting access to curriculum right now. The second group we're most fascinated by are our alumni, who keep telling us that they want to be able to give us feedback on our teaching, not just our content, but our ways of teaching. And so we want to do MOOCs with edX because we have alumni around the world who want to stay in touch. So Vice-Chancellor, I have high expectations that you will enrol next year and do one of our MOOCs. He's smiling very sanguinely. And we understand that edX is about continuing learners. It's not about mostly first-time learners, although we know about 5% of people doing edX are high school students. It's continuing learners. We understand that. So attrition and retention are actually less important to us than figuring out how to connect and to stay connected. For those of you who are interested, we will be doing 2 subjects next year. Neither of them exist on campus. Neither of them are 12 weeks long. They're 6 weeks. One is astrophysics, I mentioned before. The second is called Engaging India, and it will run in English and in Hindi simultaneously, because we frankly don't know the answer to one of the most important questions is English the aspirational language of online learning? If people are given the choice of 2 languages, will they enroll in both and use both to support their learning? You noticed the graph before in a previous presentation that India is a large market for edX, and we think this is going to provide us with an opportunity to answer some questions about global learning that we don't know the answers to right now. And maybe in future, one of my deans already said, could we run one in Bahasa? I'm very keen to look at that in future, okay? What we're saying in doing all these things is moving essentially from what people call an Internet of Things, which is about information and campus movement and tracking people, to what we call an Internet of People and Things. What we want to do is reposition relationships between people and not talk on and on again about data architecture and systems architecture and forget why it is we're in education, which is about people. The second reason we want to do edX is because we think it has a lot to teach us about on-campus learning. We don't see the 2 things actually in drift from one another. We see edX as providing us with data and information that we don't currently have for on-campus learning. You've heard a lot this morning about lectures. We agree, it's a form of teaching that's been around for a long time, and it isn't particularly well based in evidence. So we want to shift our education back to evidence-based practice. You heard Eric Mazur's name mentioned already this morning. So Eric, for instance, has, with his colleagues, traced the brain activities of MIT students across campus, and when they flatline, ladies and gentlemen, that is when they attend lectures. So they have more going on mentally when they're asleep than when they actually attend lectures, and we think this is telling us something important. And to all those people that have identified that 55-minute lectures are a problem, we know that the students already solved the problem. They just listen on double speed. That's the most common solution at ANU. So an Internet of Things is a primary thing that we want to shift, recognise, but not get locked into, which is about tracking behaviour, consumer behaviour, and towards moving beyond education as thought of in these terms. When we ask students about education, they say it feels like a data dump or an overstocked library where the librarian's gone on holiday. They keep telling us, stop it already, stop putting your stuff on the internet and help us to figure out what's important. And in figuring out what's important, some of that can be done through machine learning, but a lot of it is through relationship. So I'm going to hook back now and talk about how we might think about the Internet of People at our university and then in Malaysia. The first challenge is actually that we're very research intensive. 92% of our staff are above world standard in research in the Australian research rankings. They love their research, they live their research. But we've asked them to map that research, which is all about outputs and data and how many publications and high SCI indexes, back to their curriculum so that the students feel connected with them as researchers. They need to know who they are as people, and they need to feel part of that research community. So we've been doing that for about a year, and the students are extremely excited because they want to be part of our community. That's pretty old-fashioned, but it's important. The second one is a really interesting one for us. As the number of students in Australia in higher education has exploded, absolutely exploded. It's now gone to 500,000 students. We have found that the students coming to ANU have contracted and that their entry scores have gone up and up and up and up. The highest and fastest growth group for us are students who are in the top 1 percentile of Australian high schools. So as the number of students has expanded in the sector, actually the kinds of students coming to our university has contracted into quite a narrow band. There's more of them, 3% more per year, but what's happening is that we are essentially, to put it nicely, creaming off the top from around Australia, and that means that we've got very intelligent students, but they may be missing some important things. So what have we done? Well, we introduced this, and some of you might have heard about this, a $50 million gift just this year to introduce a group of scholarships for students who are very talented, but who also believe in the spirit of giving, connection, and commitment, okay? We can all talk about being connected with people, reaching out, doing online learning, but unless our ethos as educators is about these things, then we might have missed the point. And we therefore have a lot in common with Help University and your values of courageously giving and thinking about giving back to other people. We think that actually if you want to find the heart of online learning, it's got to be that. When we put our stuff up in MOOCs, it's got to be giving to the world. It's got to be creating relationships with other people. So let me finish off by coming to Malaysia. And I'm very pleased to be back here because one of the things that intrigues me most about Malaysia, and one of the things that I like most about Malaysia, is that it's got a much broader definition of university excellence than some of us work with. So in Australia, university excellence is defined pretty much on the basis of research outputs, as it should be. It's fantastic. But Setara focuses our minds not only on the quality of the research, but on the quality of the education that the students are granted every day. And those of you who've worked within Setara know that you have to demonstrate higher order skills with your students all the time. It's absolutely critical. What are those higher order skills? Now, if you take a very traditional Bloomian model, we'll assume that they're all just cognitive skills that come down to being things demonstrated perhaps in pen and paper tests. But the truth is that a high order cognitive skill is one that's exercised in a range of contexts quite laterally. Let me give you an example. A student who knows and has mastered mathematics is one thing. A student who knows and has mastered mathematics and uses that skill to educate other people and to grow a community has applied that in a highly creative way. Okay? So to conclude, Setara, although people might argue around the edges of Setara and quibble with parts of it, actually provides Malaysia with an opportunity to demonstrate that its students just don't know things, but they apply those skills in giving back and growing and nurturing connections and relationships. So the challenge is for the next round of Setara, can we take the idea of an Internet of Things, counting inputs and outputs, and recognise the thing that we do truly well, and that places like Help do truly well, which is to build back young people, give them the skills, and help them to grow the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think all of us can actually see in her presentation the passion she has for the digital world and the environment we live in. And I think it brings up some interesting comments that she mentioned. And one of them was the technology. And I'm sure all of us have on our bodies something that beeps, buzzes, talks to us, or even vibrates. So how do we use this technology? And I think it was a theme she brought through her presentation on how to develop this digital environment we live in to be more connected, and this connectability. And I think one of the questions, one of the interesting thing is, what do we want to connect? You know, it wasn't mentioned who, what is being connected. So I think that's an important feature. But anyway, we have a few minutes for questions. And if you do have a question, raise your hand and use the mic, because I know it is very difficult to talk. I'll let you have this one. Not everyone has my voice, so it's good to use the mic.
Good morning. Hi. I'm very glad to meet you here because my wife and I also graduated from Tasmania University. We were actually in the area of linguistics. So my question is, because I understand that in modern days we have the term called the essay students. They write essays, they produce a lot, and based on the quantity, but there's a lacking of quality we're talking about in the previous session. So I'm not sure what is your personal opinion towards that, and do you have any suggestion to help to improve that situation in terms of MOOCs, in terms of the technology, and also you mentioned about the Tackwell, the thing, and to help to get students to involve in the study more in terms of research and the writing papers and also publish articles to make it more interesting and interactive at the same time for the language learning students and other subjects as well. Thank you very much.
Sure. So the Internet of Things is often a volume internet. So we are overwhelmed by an incredible amount of information. And yet our students tell us over and over again that significance is the thing that most matters to them. That's the thing they want to learn. And to learn significance, we may need to be connected with other people to help us learn those things. That's what they're telling us, is that they can't see themselves to that outcome. They need some assistance to get to that space. So I view it as it's not about how much there is. Learning is not about volume. It's not about time served. It's actually about being able to demonstrate those higher order skills. And those higher order skills are not pen and paper, necessarily cognitive skills. They're skills that you see somebody utilize when they start a startup company, or that they figure out how to run an NGO, or they go and work and they become a very innovative employee for a company. Those are the things we're really, really focused on. Now, linguistics is an interesting one because we have a very high research rating for linguistics, but our undergraduate students don't want to do it. They never heard of it. They're not interested in it. It's a really arcane subject, a lot of 17-year-olds. It's pretty fascinating. But if you watch them over 3 or 4 years, they do drift towards linguistics. They wander into that space, but it's not a natural space for them to want to be in. And that highlights a critical point for all of us is exposure to curriculum via television or MOOCs or the internet directs our attention to particular things, okay, and particular skill sets. So I'm overrun by students that, for instance, watch the History Channel and they know an awful lot about World War II. They know huge amounts about JFK. They know absolutely nothing about Asian history or about Australian history. They know nothing about linguistics. They probably never heard of anthropology before. They might have done a bit of philosophy. So we view it as critical to use our online materials to forge a connection in those spaces as well, because we think the skills that you learn in some of those disciplines are sadly overlooked by a lot of students. They might be very focused on a vocational outcome, but we view those degrees as very useful. We don't at ANU strictly talk about employability because our students actually don't like the word, bizarrely enough. They think it's too vocational. What they want to talk about are skills that they can adapt across 6 or 7 careers in their lifetime. So to come back to you is actually about knowing which skills are important, quality over volume, and recognising that actually we're bequeathed sometimes blind spots by the students and we have to show them that there are opportunities to come to other places.
Any other questions? I'll go back to my question.
Sure.
The one on who are we connecting? I think the use of technology, the advancement of technology, gives us opportunities we didn't have in Donald's very early sitting in front of a podium and lecturing for students with a blackboard behind it. So what's your ideas?
So who are we connecting to? On campus, we actually frankly don't know most of the time because a lot of our practice isn't evidence-based. It's what we assume is right, and if they keep turning up, we assume it works. But our view is that actually it's got to be good evidence-based learning, and that means knowing who that person is. And that's not just putting an RFID chip on them and following them around campus. There's actually, frankly, when there was a big survey done of Australian university students 3 years ago, 52% of students said they weren't sure that the lecturers knew what their name was. That's a very startling and disturbing statistic for us It is as simple as actually, does somebody know who you are? Do they know what your name is? Can they spell it the right way? Have they ever had a conversation with you? So that's the on-campus answer. In terms of MOOC land, who do we want to connect with? Well, I said alumni are a really critical group for us. We've got a lot of them out there. High school students are important, but parents as well, we think. There's a lot of secret shoppers out there who want to look and see, is this university okay for my child? Can I keep an eye on what's going on? And if the rest of the world wants to come on board and be part of the 1 billion people that edX wants to educate, that is awesome for us, absolutely awesome.